Hello and welcome back. We're going to talk about the outlook of college basketball as a whole right now. I think best way to do that is look at the schedule for this weekend. Tonight you've got Iowa and Illinois is the big one, but that's the other big one that was supposed to happen was Richmond SLU. That game got postponed. SLU's still having COVID problems. You look ahead to tomorrow, though, you've got the SEC Big 12 Challenge. Wetzel, as a Big 12 fan, which game are you most excited to see tomorrow?
I'm going to go with two games. There's two games I think I'm the most excited for. And the first game I'm most excited for, I'll do kind of an early and a later slate. Um, the first game is Alabama and Oklahoma. I think Alabama has played, they're 14-3, ranked ninth in the country. They kind of snuck up there. But they're a team that's very high scoring, high pace. Um, Going up against Oklahoma, who's coming off the win at Texas, a big win for them. I think these are two teams that are playing really well right now, and I think it's going to be it could be like a 90-91 ball game. That's at 11 a.m. So a great way to start the college basketball day. And then the other one I'm excited for later in the day is postponed. So never mind. I was gonna say Texas at Kentucky simply because I think Kentucky's not great, but I think they're kind of starting to figure it out. Obviously, they lost to Alabama recently, but I was going to go with that one just because I think this was an opportunity for Texas they're ranked fifth. This was going to be an opportunity for them to get a still winning at Kentucky is going to be a nice road win for them, a chance to kind of cement them being a legit contending team. And obviously, with that game getting postponed, that's going to, I think, hurt Texas's resume a little bit. Um, but
I'll give you another game I'm looking at too
yeah,
a little bit later. The Kansas at Tennessee, I think, will be
hmm
an interesting matchup. Tennessee's a very good defensive team, not as good offensively. Kansas has really struggled to shoot the ball from three, kind of similar to the problems that Kentucky and Duke have both had. They don't really have anybody that can knock down consistent shots. So it'll be interesting to see that game. I think it could be very low scoring,
hmm
especially with how Tennessee plays defensively in your face. And Kansas, on the other side, also plays pretty good defense. I think that's kind of an underrated part of Bill Self. It seems like his teams usually always play good defense. I think it's kind of underrated because they usually stick to man. So they've got a lot of guys that can press you in your face and get after you that way. Other game I am looking at, I think when you look at uh, this team, it's not a great matchup, but I think this team's really starting to hit their stride and getting things going. And I think that's Florida State. They're playing Georgia Tech. I think they're the team to watch out for in the ACC right now. I know Virginia's undefeated in the ACC, but I think Georgia or Florida State, excuse me, is really finding their stride and they're clicking on all cylinders. It seems like recently.
yeah, Florida State's like they're always a team I think that you don't really hear about until March when they're all of a sudden in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. Leonard Hamilton always seems to do a great job with those teams he's got. Um, the ACC is wide open this year, and Florida State could very well end up winning the whole thing, just like a handful of other teams could. Um, Speaking of the ACC, Virginia at Virginia Tech, 5 o'clock. That'll be a good game. I think that'll also be a low scoring game. There's a lot of games on tomorrow, not a lot of great matchups. There's a couple ranked teams going on the road. There's a one Valley game. Um, the Big 12 the Big 12 SEC challenge, I think, is going to get a lot of the watch. Um, I know it's not college basketball, but the Lakers play at the Celtics tomorrow on prime time. I know that's a big matchup, um, but there's just a lot of college basketball on tomorrow. So maybe you don't find a big school playing. Maybe you turn on Siena and Marist and watch a game and a game like that and find a good game. Um, but
Yeah.
Sunday, there's a lot of Valley games to watch as well. So Sunday, not a lot of ranked teams playing, but some Valley games. So we can lock into those and watch another weekend of the Valley.
Yeah, it seems like, some of the bigger programs are hitting some COVID issues. So they're having cancellations. So, I mean, as a casual or college basketball fan, I think now would be the time to watch some of these mid-major games, get to know some of them. You mentioned Siena, they're currently leading their conference. So get familiar with some of these teams and, maybe pick out some of these Cinderella stories that you might like come tournament time. Because they're a team that seems like they're almost always around. You got Toledo playing Saturday. You've got some St. Bonaventure playing Saturday. There's some good mid-major teams that are playing this weekend that you could really get a look at and really kind of pick out who you like for the tournament. With that being said, I'm going to go through and I did as I was doing looking at stats for Bradley, happen to go on, Ken Palm team rankings, look at the offensive and defensive efficiency. I'm going to read you a list of 9 teams. You tell me what they all have in common. Gonzaga, Baylor, University of Michigan, Houston, Virginia, Illinois, Alabama, Texas, and Texas Tech.
Um, they're probably all ranked highly in defense and offense metrics. Probably some sort of adjusted offense and adjusted defense metric. Those are all probably 9 of the top 10 teams in those metrics.
Yes, so it's offensive and defensive efficiency on Ken Palm. All 9 of those teams are ranked inside the top 25. Uh, and then tell me what these 7 teams have in common. Baylor, Loyola, Vermont, Drake, Wright State, Boise State, and Colgate.
Gee, that's a wide net. I mean, it's got to be something with defensive, right? You had Loyola, Baylor in there. I would think probably something defensively.
So those 7 teams, according to team rankings, are the 7 most efficient teams offensively and defensively when you put them together.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There are a total of 10 teams who ranked inside the top 50 on both Ken Palm and team rankings. They are Gonzaga, Baylor, Michigan, Houston, Texas Tech, Colorado, a surprising team out of the Pac 12, USC, Loyola, Arkansas, and SLU. So when you look at these offensive and defensive efficiency ratings, a lot of times they tell you that who can do well in March Madness. Everybody always tells you around tournament time, familiarize yourself with those teams who rank inside the top 50 on both because they'll probably have a good run. You look at some of these teams, I mean, Gonzaga, we always talk about. Baylor, we're always talking about. Michigan's been surprising, but we're always talking about them. People are surprised with Houston. Texas Tech isn't a team who I expected to be up there, but they are. Colorado, a good team out of the Pac 12. USC, good team out of the Pac 12 as well. Loyola slew 2 of the mid majors that we've talked about. And then you got Arkansas in there as well. Those are teams I'd probably keep an eye on. I think they do a good job of telling who's going to be good come tournament time when you look at those efficiency ratings because sometimes you play these different styles where you have to either go up tempo, you have to go down tempo, where like a Wisconsin where they really slow the game down. So if you're able to score at an efficient rate or defend at an efficient rate, you can really do well in the tournament. A team I really like out of those 10 teams I listed off is Colorado. And I don't think Colorado's getting enough love right now out of the Pac 12. I believe they're 13-4 right now. They're doing a lot of good things. And it seems like football and basketball, they're not getting enough love from national media.
Yeah, Colorado's a team I think could. I mean, I think they were picked like fourth or fifth in the Pac-12, and I think they're like second right now in it. I think I agree. I think it's weird they're not even ranked in the top 25. But yeah, there's some mid-major teams. You mentioned SLU like Loyola that can easily find themselves on the second weekend of the tournament in the Sweet 16. And like you mentioned, those metrics are interesting because the fact that these teams are highly ranked offensively and defensively and can play both up tempo and slow tempo really is going to help them, and much more than just a team like a Duke or Kentucky of the last few years are just one and dones that are
Mhm.
just talented. So I think this year, with how kind of down some of the bigger conferences are, we could see more mid-major schools having success, or lower ranked Power 5 schools like Colorado, who's not ranked in the top 25, end up in the Sweet 16. And I think that's good for college basketball because you're getting a wider variety of the teams in a year where Duke's not good, Kentucky's not good. They don't deserve to be in those spots.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, if you look at bracketology right now, I'll read off some of the four seeds. You got Florida State. Like I said, they're getting hot right now. Illinois has played well, but they've also played poorly at times. They're kind of up and down. You've got Kansas, who's really struggled to shoot the ball, like we mentioned. West Virginia, a team that's up and down as well. And then you look at the five seeds, you got UCLA, Creighton, Tennessee, Texas Tech. You look at all eight of those teams, there's not many of those teams that you look at and go, hey, they could make a deep run. I think you look at most of those teams and you say, hey, a mid major has a really good shot at giving these guys everything they can handle and more.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is where being a team in the Valley comes into play, because the Valley does such a good job of scouting and game planning. Where that's one of the reasons why the Valley usually wins a game in the tournament is because of how great they are at that. And I think it'll be interesting to see how a team like Loyola or Drake, who's high in both offensive and defensive metrics, who does a good job scouting, now has a week to prepare for a team and um, can really create a good game plan against one of those 4 or 5 seeds who is just ranked for being a big name. And I think this is a good year for if the Valley were to get 2 teams in, where maybe you have 2 Valley teams in the round of 32.
Yeah, right now Drake's at a 9 seed and Loyola's just outside. But Drake would be matched up right now with UConn, and if Loyola would sneak their way in, they'd be matched up with Texas Tech. And I look at both those matchups and I say that's pretty favorable for both teams. UConn, obviously, you don't know what's happening with Boog Knight right now. If he's back, they're a completely different team. If he's not there, you like Drake's chances in that game. Texas Tech, they've got Mac McClung, but outside of that, it doesn't seem like they've got much. It seems like they rely on him a little too much. And it seems like that's a really favorable matchup if Loyola were to get in that spot. I think the big thing when you look at the brackets going forward and you get closer to Selection Sunday, I think the big thing for some of these teams who are getting hot would be to avoid Gonzaga and Baylor in your bracket because
Mhm.
you don't want to run up against one of those teams. Gonzaga is the most efficient offense in the country. We've both talked about it. They put up all these gaudy numbers on offense, and it doesn't matter who it's coming from, really. It could be any one of their starters or even somebody off the bench. Baylor's really been impressive. Jared Butler started to build a player of the year campaign for himself, but they also get after you on the defensive side and are really impressive. So I think for anybody looking at a shot at the Final Four, avoiding Baylor and Gonzaga would be a good route to go.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think getting that getting that opposite side of the bracket of them is important because I mean they've been the two most dominant teams this year. I mean Baylor covered 25-point spread against Kansas State the other night by like 10. So I mean like they won by 35, I think, and it's they've been the two most dominant teams, and it hasn't been close. And we'll see two teams that could end up in the Final Four in Illinois and Iowa tonight. But I mean, there's no one close to those two teams. So yeah, just avoiding them at all costs and staying out of their way until the Final Four when anything can happen.
Yeah. Who are some other teams that you think could make the Final Four? Obviously, we just mentioned Baylor and Gonzaga. Who are some other teams you're looking at that could potentially make a deep run in March?
Um, I like Houston. I think Houston's a team that when you watch them, they are a very in your face, up in your business, hound you for 40 minutes kind of team. And they've played some decent competition. The American isn't great, but it's good. And I think they have enough offensively. They rely on their defensive heavy team. They rely on their defense, but they have enough offensively that they could win in a higher scoring game. I think if their defense was getting torn up. But they're a team that I think come tournament time is going to probably end up on that three line that could give some teams some problems. Them and then another team I think is because a potential Final Four team. They're ranked fourth right now is Michigan. Their center Fredrickson, I think is his name,
Hmm.
is a. I mean, he is one of the best freshmen in college basketball. He is not yet talked about in the conversation with Jalen Suggs and um, a couple of the other freshmen that I'm blanking on their names right now.
Kate
But
Cunningham.
yeah, like Cunningham, Suggs, he is up there in that conversation with those guys. But Michigan, like they're a good defensive team. They're a good offensive team that could find themselves there as a one seed opposite of Baylor, opposite of Gonzaga. So those are two teams I like to be potential Final Four candidates. If I had to take a kind of a long shot team, um, I'm gonna go with. We both have kind of liked this team, kind of hopped on this train as Boise State. They're a long shot. They're receiving votes to be ranked right now, but they're a team that I think has played some good competition in the Mountain West. They're a team that has scored like in the 90s in a few games. I think they're a team that if they got the right matchup on the first weekend, could find themselves playing for a playing in the Sweet 16, giving some teams some problems, and going to the Final Four.
Yeah, you mentioned the Mountain West there. They're right now sitting at three projected teams in with a fourth on the bubble. I mean that those top four teams, yeah, Utah State, you get Colorado State, Boise State, and San Diego State. All four of those teams could create matchup nightmares. They all play pretty well defensively and they all play pretty well offensively. That conference, once you get to those semifinal matchups, is going to be absolute dogfight. And then all four of those teams, I think, could win a game come March. I'll talk about a couple teams that I like. I've talked about them already today. Florida State, I really like. I think they're going to emerge as the clear front runner in the ACC. And I think you got to get on them now because I think they're building momentum and they're not going to stop. Feels kind of similar to last year. I think they might be a little less talented than they were last year, but I still think the coaching's there. The schemes are there, everything like that, and I think they're going to get rolling into March. Right now, I think they're around a 4 seed, but I think they could hop up to 3-2 line. I think I really like them. I think they're definitely a team to watch out for. Um, Another team I really like as well is the team we mentioned is going to play tonight, Iowa. I know they're not as good defensively, but it feels so hard to match them on offense. Feels like every night they're scoring 80 plus, 90 plus, and you focus in on Luca Garza. They've got shooters on the outside. Fredrickson's one of the best 3-point shooters in the country. Jordan Bohannon's been there for 10 years, but he's still knocking down shots for him. They just feel really good. Them and Michigan, I think, are the class of the Big Ten because they're so well balanced. They don't have to rely on Luca, but they can. And Michigan as well, they don't have to rely on their big, but they can. And it seems like if he has an off night, their guards pick up the slack. So those are two teams out of the Big Ten as well that you really got to look out for. I'll give you a long shot at, that's not in the Valley because I do think Loyola can make it a deep run again. I'll talk about them a little more in a minute. But I think SLU is definitely a team to watch out for. I've talked about them almost all year. They had the long layoff, about a month-long layoff before they played, lost their most recent game, then had this game, the game tonight, postponed. But I think once they get back rolling, they'll be the favorite in the A10, and you'll see them play very well offensively and defensively. They're a senior-heavy team, so they could cause a lot of problems, I think, come March. Loyola, I want to talk about them real quick for a second. Because I think they're a team that can make a run in March. I think this team might be better than the team that went to the Final Four. What are your thoughts on that, Wetzel?
I mean, I don't know if they're better. I think that they're for sure deeper. I think that they're more balanced. But that team that went to the Final Four, I mean, they had some guys on it who could I don't necessarily want to say take over a game, but they had some guys that they could go to and rely on. Seems like this year they're just an overall better team in terms of not one guy. It's a we more mentality. It's everyone does their part. So I don't. I mean, I think that they're a tough team come tournament time. I think that they'll give whatever team they play fits and could win a couple games. I don't know if I want to say that they're better than that Final Four team, but they definitely have the pieces to do it. And I think if they get in that typical 12-5 game where it seems like the 12 wins two of them every year, they could very well win that game. And they'll be a tough team to play against with how good of defense they play as a team
Right.
in March.
Yeah. I mean they do I think they are more balanced, but they also do have some guys still. We all know about Krutwig. Seems like he's been there forever. He can take over a game if you don't have people down low who can handle him. And then we saw in the second game against Loyola or between Loyola and Bradley, Marquise Kennedy took over the game and really made his statement on why he's one of the better players in the Valley. He's only a sophomore and he comes off the bench, but getting that kind of production off the bench, you mentioned it, I think they're definitely deeper than they were then. Getting that kind of production off the bench is huge, especially if you come tournament time and you can get somebody who can score 18 plus points off the bench. That's huge for a team. Uh, I really like what they've done, especially recently. I think they're starting to really hit their form and what their full potential could be. Team I want to talk about that's kind of surprised a lot of people. Uh, this will be my last team that I really want to talk about, but that's Alabama. You mentioned it a little bit. They're number 9 right now. They're I think 14-3, is it? And they've kind of really snuck up on people. They're undefeated in the SEC, and they've kind of gotten rolling once they hit SEC play.
Yeah, they so Iowa State played them, I believe it was last year, um, in the battle. Was it Battle for the Atlantis? I think it was. Or anyway, Iowa State played them last year, and it was a very, very high scoring, up and down game. And they talked about how that's how Alabama wants to play under Nate Oates. And then you watch them this year, and they are doing it at a higher level. He's gotten some better recruits in. He's got more guys with another year under their system. They like, what was the game against LSU? They shot like 16 threes or something like that. Like, that is their game. That is what they want to do. And they're going to be an interesting team because I think they're similar to Iowa, and they're similar to what I think we thought Drake was going to be like, was an offensive team who can score 90 points, but they're going to give up 80 something and not play a lot of defense. I still have my doubts about Iowa. I think Drake has kind of shown that they can play defense. Alabama, I think, has shown that at times, but I think they still are struggling with keeping teams below their averages. And that's a big thing, where if you're letting a team score above their average, you're not really playing great defense. If you're keeping teams underneath their average, that's how you win games. And I don't think Alabama has really done that a lot this year. So they're going to be an interesting team to watch in tournament time, of can they play defense when it matters. But they're definitely a team that I think could end up on that 3 or 4 line and make some noise if they get hot. And like you said earlier, play their best basketball at the end of the year, because their best basketball is good enough to win a few games in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I'm not sure they're all there defensively. You take a look at their 3 losses. Stanford scored 82 points against them. Clemson beat them when they didn't have their best offensive night. Alabama, that is. They only scored 56 in that game. And then Western Kentucky, a mid-major we've talked about, beat them 73-71. So those 3 losses, I mean, they gave up an average of 75 plus a game. So they're not really slowing teams down defensively. And the thing that worries me about them too, on the offensive side, 47% of their shots come from 3-point range. And I don't know if you can rely on the 3 that heavily, especially at a college level,
Hmm.
when you know that some kids can get cold. So I don't know if that can last for, 4 or 5 games in a tournament setting, because that just doesn't seem like you can rely that heavily on the 3 and then be that poorly defensively and make a deep run, in my opinion. They're
Hmm.
fun to watch, but I just don't know if it results in a deep tournament run.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with you. You just, I mean, we see with Bradley all the time, 5, 6 minutes without scoring. I mean,
Mhm.
it's what it is. These kids aren't professionals. They'll go. They have their droughts. So I think it'll be. I think Alabama's a very, very interesting team. They're a team that you could either not want to play at all, or a team that you could say, we can shut them down and keep them from scoring if they're not playing their best basketball.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Is there any other teams or conferences that you wanted to talk about?
No, I don't have too much else. I guess the last thing I would end on is would give a shout out to Ryan Sharbaugh and Troy Pierce, 2 former Bradley assistants. Ryan Sharbaugh is an assistant with Cleveland State. They're playing actually Green Bay, so Wardle's old school tonight. Um, and they were picked like towards the bottom of their conference. I don't think it was actually last, but towards the bottom, and they're 10-5 right now, and I believe in first place in the conference. Um, they're 10-2 in conference, 10-5 overall. So shout out to them, and then shout out to Troy Pierce, who's down at Southern Illinois, Edwardsville. They've kind of hit their stride late. They picked up a win last night um, or they lost by 2 last night to SEMO, but they're sitting at 5-6 and kind of doing better than I think what people thought they were going to be. They should have beat SEMO. They were winning all game long, but just shout out to them. Seems like they're on their on their greener pastures and starting to turn their programs around in year one already. So you like to see former assistants under Wardle, former guys under Wardle start to have their own careers and forge their own paths. So, but that's all I got. I'm got an hour until the Iowa Illinois game, and that'll be a fun game to watch. It's a shame there's not going to be fans there, but it'll be a fun game.
Yeah, talk about two teams who absolutely hate each other. If you don't know, they had a bit of a scuffle at the end of the game last year when the two met. I believe it was in February, the last time they met. And
Williams, man, pride of Peoria pride.
yeah, they did not. The coaches did not have kind words for the other teams as well. So it'll be a very good game. Could be a very testy game. Should be a good one though. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you follow us on Twitter as well, from_knows. We'll keep you updated there. Tune in next time as we discuss more college basketball.